G major 7th. G minor 7th. F major 7th. F minor 7th. A series of chords, some scales, arpeggios. These are the harmonic and melodic elements of music. Most of us start on the guitar learning a few chords, then some scales. But arpeggios are often overlooked or approached haphazardly. The fingerings for the chords we strum are not usually organized simply as a series of thirds, and so we have to rearrange our fingerings in order to play basic arpeggios. For instance, bar chords are root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. But the arpeggio for that chord is root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. So the bar chord has to be broken to play the arpeggio across all 6 strings. Likewise, with the 7th chord forms. The dominant 7th bar chord is root, 5th, 7th, 3rd, 7th, root. A major 7th chord, root, 5th, 7th, 3rd, as opposed to root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. The fingerings we use for arpeggios and the fingerings we use for the chords we strum can be so different that it may be difficult to understand the connection between the two. In this video, we'll approach arpeggios from a different perspective. We'll dig into their underlying interval structure and reveal the pattern that connects them all. Arpeggios are chords played one note at a time. On the guitar, if you want to play arpeggios based on root position voicings in their default sequence, root 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, you must understand the interval structure of each arpeggio and learn numerous fingering patterns. The simplest arpeggios are basic triads. Each diatonic key has 3 major triads, 3 minor triads, and 1 diminished triad. These are fairly simple to learn, memorize, and play. Each of these 3 basic types of triads has 3 fingering forms on the fretboard. The 6th string and the 5th string root forms are the same shape as each other. The 4th and 3rd string forms comprise 2 different sets of shapes. Here's the 3 major forms and the 3 minor forms. And the 3 diminished forms. Chords are essentially stacks of thirds. They can have 3 notes, like triads, root, 3rd, 5th. They can have 4 notes, as in 7th chords, root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. 9th chords have 5 notes, 11th chords have 6 notes, and 13th chords theoretically can have all 7 notes of the key. Even on the piano, where it's physically possible to play a 7-note chord in its root voicing, that option is not usually chosen, since that many notes played simultaneously in a chord will sound cluttered or muddy. On the guitar with 6 strings, it's literally impossible to sound 7 notes at the same time. And though 6-note chords are possible on the instrument, and we're talking about 6 different notes by name, or note classes, not say a G chord with 3 Gs, 2 Bs, and a D, but say an A7th, flat 9, sharp 11 chord. There aren't too many examples of 6-note chords on the guitar like that, and those that exist have limited applications, not to mention that the notes cannot be played in their normal order of root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, or A, C sharp, E, G, B flat, D sharp, but must be played root 11th, 7th, 3rd, 5th, and then 9th, A, D sharp, G, C sharp, E, B flat, to get the notes close enough together on the neck to actually strum. At any rate, there's a real difference in function between arpeggios and true chords. Chords, as such, have a primarily harmonic role in music. Arpeggios are essentially melodic. Taking the notes of a chord and spreading them out in time reveals the melodic potential of the chord. We can play all the notes of the key in an arpeggio if we simply go from one note to another in thirds. Say C, E, G, B, D, F, A, and back to C. Or E, G, B, D, F, A, C, E. Or G, B, D, F, A, C, E, G, etc. Each of these 7 arpeggios will have a different shape on the fretboard, so it can be a daunting task to learn them all. What's the best way to approach large arpeggios beyond the triad? 6, 7 notes. As always, we want to find the simplest and most practical path to learn any fretboard patterns. To do that, we look for symmetry. The arpeggio that combines the clearest symmetry, along with the widest range of notes and the most coverage across the fretboard, is the minor 11th arpeggio, or I should say the minor 11th arpeggios, plural, because there are 2 identically structured minor 11ths in each key. One is rooted on the 2nd of the key, the other is rooted on the 6th of the key. Now, to be clear, if our only criterion was symmetry, the winner would be the Dorian minor 13th, rooted in the 2nd key degree. Its interval structure, brought full circle, is minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor. D, F, A, C, E, G, B, D. While the minor 13th, rooted on the 6th, the Aeolian arpeggio is minor, major, minor, major, minor, minor, major, A, C, E, G, B, D, F, A. But when we take each of these arpeggios and only go as far as the 11th, we end up with 2 identical interval sequences. The Aeolian minor 11th, rooted on the 6th key degree, and the Dorian minor 11th on the 2nd key degree, each share 3 fingering forms determined by the string where their lowest note is placed. The minor 11ths are positioned within basic scale blocks or zones. Their positions overlap. In the 3 and 6 zones, the Aeolian is rooted 1 string below the Dorian, a fourth apart. When you practice these arpeggios, be aware of their placement within each of the zone patterns. Studying the positional relationships between the minor 11th arpeggios and the 5 diatonic zones will help you connect scales and arpeggios and flow seamlessly from one to the other. We're looking at 3 basic arpeggio forms here: the lower form, the middle form, and the upper form, all with the same interval structure, whether they are the Aeolian minor 11th rooted in 6 or the Dorian minor 11th rooted in 2. Since each of these minor 11th forms cover only 4 strings, we can extend the forms beyond those 4 strings and cover 6 strings. In the case of the upper form, we can extend down from the 2 to the 7 to the 5 and to the 3, giving us a big arpeggio rooted in the 3. In the lower form, we can extend up from the high note of that form, the 5, to the 7, to the 2, and then to the 4 at the end. The middle form allows us to extend up and down, up from the 5 to the 7, and down from the 2 to the 7. When we extend each of these arpeggios in the Aeolian form, the extension will be 1 fret lower for each of them above and below than it was in the Dorian form that we just looked at. Extending down from the 6 to the 4 and up from the 2 to the 4. In the lower form, we extend from the 2 to the 4 to the 6 and to the 1. Finally, the Aeolian upper form extends down from the 6 to the 4 to the 2 and then to the 7 at the bottom. These minor 11th arpeggios are positioned in relationship to each other and also in relationship to the three diatonic axis positions, the Phrygian axis, the Aeolian axis, and the Dorian axis, rooted in the 3, the 6, and the 2, respectively. The lower Aeolian form of the minor 11th is rooted on the 6th string of the Aeolian axis. The middle form is rooted on the 5th string of the Phrygian axis, and the upper form, ending on 2, has its highest note on the 1st string of the Dorian axis. The lower Dorian form of the minor 11th is rooted on the 6th string of the Dorian axis. The middle form is rooted on the 5th string of the Aeolian axis, and the upper form is rooted on the 4th string of the Phrygian axis. As we go between adjacent keys in the circle of fifths, the Dorian form in one key becomes the Aeolian form in the next, just as 2 of the 3 axis positions are shared between those keys, while the remaining axis shifts to a completely new position. Arpeggios add a unique dimension to music. They're a kind of bridge between chords and scales. So having a clear understanding of their structure and how they relate to the key is important if we're going to use them effectively. It all begins with intervals, the sequence of major and minor thirds that connects every arpeggio in a diatonic key. The alternation between major thirds and minor thirds, with one exception between the 7, the 2, and the 4 of the key, where the diminished triad lives, the only instance of 2 consecutive minor thirds. Knowing the key degrees of each arpeggio we play is essential. Also essential is knowing where those key degrees are on the fretboard so we can place the arpeggios in the best harmonic context. To do that, we need consistent reference points, such as the 3 axis positions I've just delineated. In a future video, I'll focus on these axis frets and explore more of their functions. For now, you can see how they serve as anchor positions within each key to align the arpeggios. I'll be covering more practical applications of these arpeggios as well. For now, I hope to have opened the door to a different perspective that you'll find interesting and useful. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or questions in the comments below. As always, thank you for liking, thank you for sharing and subscribing, and I will see you soon.